letting go does not mean forgetting. It means making space for who you are now and who you're becoming. You can honor a season without housing every artifact from it. You can keep the memory without keeping everything. Memory and meaning can live inside of you, not just around you. You can honor your kid's childhood without keeping every scrap of artwork. You can honor your mom's memory without keeping all of her dishes. You can honor your past and your past identity and your past season without letting it take over your present. Well, this is episode 2 in our 3-part clutter series. And if you haven't listened to episode 1 yet, where we walk through all 10 clutter languages, go back and start there, because today we're going to go deep on one specific language. And it's going to make a lot more sense if you have listened to that episode first and you kind of have that foundation. So it's the episode right before this one, and they all start with clutter help in the title, okay? So if you're ready and caught up, let's go. All right, if I had to pick just one clutter language that I see over and over and over again in women, especially in midlife, it's this one. It's the sentimental saver. And it has nothing to do with being messy or lazy. And it has everything to do with grief and transitions and identity shifts and emotions that you've never fully processed. This isn't about stuff. It's about seasons. It's about who you were, who you are, and who you're becoming. And no clutter checklist can solve that. And so today, we're not talking about bins or labels or organizing hacks. We're talking about the story that your clutter is holding and how to honor it without drowning in it. So let's dive in and get started. So here's why being a sentimental saver is so common in women, especially midlife women. It's because life is full of transitions, and many of them are hard transitions. And for women in midlife, it is essentially transition central. Your kids are growing up, your body is changing, your parents are aging, your marriage might be shifting, your friendships might be different. And all of those things come with a certain amount of grief. And it's, I think, spoken and unspoken. It's realized and unrealized. It's the grief of watching your kids pull away, or the grief of not recognizing your own body. It's the grief of realizing that your parents aren't going to be here forever. It's the grief of letting go of the version of yourself who was always needed and always busy and always at the center of it all. And when we don't process that grief, it can show up in our homes. It can show up in the baby clothes that we can't donate, in the boxes of school projects that we just can't sort through, in the furniture from our parents' house that we don't even like but can't let go of. Because all of those things, they're not just things, they're memory holders. They are identity fragments. They are emotional anchors. And so letting go, it feels like erasing the past. But here's the truth. It's not erasing the past. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means making space for who you are now and who you're becoming. And that is the kind of work that must be done before we even touch a thing if we are a sentimental saver. So let me paint you a picture. You're standing in your garage or your attic or the closet in the spare room, and you're staring at all of these bins that you haven't opened in years. Inside of them is things like baby shoes and tiny outfits and the outfit that your daughter wore on her first day of kindergarten and the blanket that your son slept with every night for 3 years. You know you're not having more kids. You know your kids are teenagers now. You know you don't need this stuff, but still, you can't let it go. Because that onesie, it isn't just a onesie. It's the memory of rocking your kids to sleep at 2 a.m. It's the feeling of their tiny hand wrapped around your finger. It's the version of yourself who was so needed, who was so central, who was so essential. And if you let go of the onesie, what happens to that version of you? What happens to the mom who was everything to your kids? Who are you now that they don't need you in the same way? That's the real question, and that's why the clutter stays. And so here's what most decluttering advice gets wrong. It treats sentimental clutter like it does paper clutter, or the junk drawer, or expired pantry stuff. And it's not the same. You can't logic your way out of sentimental clutter. There's no expiration date on it. You can't just decide to let it go, because keeping it isn't the problem. Not understanding what it represents is the problem. So let me be really clear about something. These aren't just items, they're memory holders. They're identity fragments. They are emotional anchors. And until you separate the memory from the item, you're just going to keep holding on. That baby blanket, it's not just fabric. It's the memory of soothing your child. It's the feeling of being the one who could fix everything in a season where it might feel like you can fix nothing. The box of cards from your mom, it's not just paper. It's her handwriting. It's her voice. It's the proof of how much she loved you. That dress that you wore to your wedding, it's not just a dress. It's the hope that you had that day. It's the belief that everything was going to be wonderful and beautiful in your life. And when you hold on to the item, you're holding on to that feeling. You're holding on to that season and to the version of yourself who lived in that moment. But here's the shift you've got to make. You can honor a season without housing every artifact from it. You can keep the memory without keeping everything. And you can let go of the item without letting go of the love or the meaning or the person that you were. Well, hey there. Before we go any further, I want to give you something that will help this conversation actually make more sense. Because if clutter has been a struggle for you, it's probably not because you don't care or because you don't try or because you lack motivation. It's because you're clutter and you speak a specific clutter language and no one ever taught you how to listen. I created a free resource called the Clutter Languages Guide, and it's not about organizing or decluttering faster. In fact, there's no step-by-step processes in it anywhere. It's about recognition. And as you read through it, you'll start to see why clutter shows up the way it does in your life and what it's holding, what it's protecting, and what it's been asking from you. You might recognize yourself in one language. You might see pieces of yourself in several. That's totally normal. This isn't some sort of test. There is no right answer or one right language, and you don't need to fix anything yet. Understanding comes before fixing. Fixing and momentum can come later. You can download the free guide at clutterlanguagesguide.com or using the link below. And I want you to approach it slowly. Don't take any action, but just notice what lands. What makes you say, oh, that's me? This will indicate your clutter language because when you understand the pattern, the shame can soften. And when the shame softens, then change becomes possible. So let's start there. So let me give you another real life example. Your mom passed away and you inherited a bunch of her stuff. You've got furniture and dishes and decor. Some of it you love, but some of it you don't. But you keep it all still because getting rid of it feels like getting rid of her in a way, in a big way. And so your house is full of things that aren't your style, that don't fit your life, that make you feel guilty every time you look at them. And the guilt that you're feeling, it's not about the stuff, it's about the fear. The fear that if you let go of her things, you're letting go of her. The fear that you're a bad daughter if you don't love it because she did, or if you don't keep everything. The fear that the memories will fade if the items aren't there to hold them. But that's not how the memory works. Memory lives in you. It doesn't live in the china cabinet. And letting go of the stuff doesn't mean letting go of her. But that is logic. And the thing about logic is that logic and emotions, they don't live in the same space without intentionality. And that intentionality is what we're here to start to create. And here's what that looks like. It looks like starting off with making space to grieve, to breathe, to live your life without carrying the weight of all of these memories at the same time. All right, so now that we have named what's happening, let's talk about how to shift it. Not with force, not with shame, but with compassion. Here are 3 reframes that have helped my clients and me start to release what's holding us back because among all of the 10 clutter languages, I honestly have nuances of both, but sentimental saver, that is my primary language. So I am right there with you. So reframe number 1 is that letting go does not mean forgetting. And this really is a big one. Because for a long time, you've probably been telling yourself that if you got rid of the item, you would lose the memory. This has been your fear. But it's not true. The memory doesn't live in that box. It doesn't live in the item. It lives right here. It lives in you. You don't need the onesie to remember rocking your baby to sleep. You don't need the cards to remember your mom's love. You don't need the dress to remember your wedding day. You carry those memories with you always. And letting go of the item, it doesn't erase the memory. It just makes space for the life that you are living now. So that's reframe one. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. Reframe number two, you can honor a season without storing every artifact from it. And this one is huge, I think, for midlife women especially, because you're transitioning out of the season where you were kind of the center of everything as the mom. You were the mom, you were the caregiver, you were the nurturer, you were the problem solver, you were the one that everyone needed. And it's hard to let that go. It takes it's a grieving process. It's an identity shift. It's something that you are looking forward to. It's all of it wrapped up in one. But you don't have to keep every single reminder of that season to prove that it mattered. You can honor it. You can celebrate it. You can be grateful for it. And you can let those items go because the next season, the season that you are emerging and embarking on right now, well, that season matters too. And you can step into it more fully if you're not clinging to the past at the same time. So reframe number two is you can honor a season without storing every artifact from it. Reframe number three, memory and meaning can live inside of you, not just around you. It can live inside, not just around. And this is the hardest one, I think, but it's also the most freeing. You've been using your stuff as a filing cabinet for your emotions, but your heart is big enough to hold it all. Your mind is strong enough to remember. Your soul is grounded enough to carry the meaning without the filing cabinet as well. You don't need the stuff to prove that any of these things that you've lived through was real. It was real. All of those things you're remembering, you lived it, you felt it, and it's part of you. Now, let it be apart from you. It can still be a part of you. All right, so those are the shifts, but how do we actually do this, right? How do we actually move forward and start letting some of this go? Well, it's not with a big dramatic purge. It's not with a weekend project, but with what I would say is gentle, intentional mental shifts. Here are the three that I use with myself and my clients. Shift number one is to name what the item represents. So before you decide whether you're going to keep it or let it go, ask yourself, what is this really about? What is this onesie really about? Is it about the memory? Is it about the person? Is it about the season? Is it about the version of yourself who lived in that moment? Name it out loud if you need to. You could say things like, this blanket represents the feeling of being needed. This box of cards represents my mom's love. This dress represents the hope that I had on my wedding day. Once you name it, you can separate yourself from it. The memory isn't the item. The feeling that's in your soul and in your heart and in your mind, the feeling isn't the fabric. And that's when you can start to let it go. Nothing inside of you and your memory of that moment changes when you let go of the item itself. Shift number two, separate memory from obligation. Just because you loved someone doesn't mean that you have to keep everything they gave you. Just because a season mattered doesn't mean that you have to store every artifact from it. You're allowed to keep what brings you joy right now and let go of the rest, even if, especially when these are things that used to bring you joy but don't anymore. And this is so hard to think through, but it's so powerful when you can start to follow and internalize these thought shifts. Shift number one was to name what the item represents. Shift number two is to separate memory from obligation. And when you do that, when you separate memory from obligation, it's not disrespectful. It doesn't mean that you're ungrateful. It's actually a healthy thing to do. You are honoring the memory of whatever that is by living fully in the present, not by continuing to drown yourself in the past. So shift number three is permission to honor without storing. And this is the one that really can change everything. You can honor your kid's childhood without keeping every scrap of artwork. You can honor your mom's memory without keeping all of her dishes. You can honor your past and your past identity and your past season without letting it take over your present. Here's some really great ways to do that. Take a photo. Journal about what you're feeling. Journal about the memory or the experience. Write a letter to that person, even if you don't ever send it. Keep one meaningful item and let the rest go. Create a memory book, a photo album, a small box of treasures, not bin after bin after bin, not closets full, not entire rooms. You decide, listen to me closely here, you decide how much space the past is going to take up in your present. And this is not an act of selfishness. This is actually honoring both you and anyone else that is wrapped up in that item in some way. Well, hey there. Before we go any further, I want to give you something that will help this conversation actually make more sense. Because if clutter has been a struggle for you, it's probably not because you don't care, or because you don't try, or because you lack motivation. It's because you're clutter and you speak a specific clutter language, and no one ever taught you how to listen. I created a free resource called the Clutter Languages Guide, and it's not about organizing or decluttering faster. In fact, there's no step-by-step processes in it anywhere. It's about recognition. And as you read through it, you'll start to see why clutter shows up the way it does in your life and what it's holding, what it's protecting, and what it's been asking from you. You might recognize yourself in one language. You might see pieces of yourself in several. That's totally normal. This isn't some sort of test. There is no right answer or one right language, and you don't need to fix anything yet. Understanding comes before fixing. Fixing and momentum can come later. You can download the free guide at clutterlanguagesguide.com or using the link below. And I want you to approach it slowly. Don't take any action, but just notice what lands. What makes you say, oh, that's me? This will indicate your clutter language, because when you understand the pattern, the shame can soften. And when the shame softens, then change becomes possible. So let's start there. So let me tell you about a client that I worked with last year. She had an entire spare bedroom full of her kids' stuff. They were now in their 20s. They were moved out. They were living their own lives, but she couldn't let this stuff go. Every time she tried, she'd break down crying because it felt like letting go of them. And again, let me say, this could be describing me. Now, I do still have kids living at home, but this is how thinking about letting go of my kids' younger stuff feels to me. So again, we didn't start with the decluttering. We started with the naming. And the question that I asked her is, what are you really afraid of? What are you really afraid of when it comes to getting rid of your kids' stuff? And what she said was gold. What she said was that I don't matter to them anymore. That was it. That was the cork in the bottle. That was the real clutter. It wasn't the bins. It was the belief. The belief was what was keeping her stuck. And once we named it, then we could work with it. We could work on that. She didn't need the stuff. She came to discover she didn't need the stuff to prove that she mattered to them. She mattered because, and still does matter, because she's their mom, and that doesn't change. And so we made a memory box. The same number of meaningful items from each one of her kids went in there. It was photos, it was letters they'd written, it was memorable pieces of clothing. And then she let all of the rest go. And it wasn't because she stopped caring, but because she finally believed, finally felt in her innermost heart that the love that she had for her kids and that she knows they have for her, it didn't live in those bins of things. It lived in her and in them. And it was so amazing to watch her go through this, because she realized that the love didn't lessen one bit when she got rid of the first bin of things. And that proved that she was still okay when she let that go, which encouraged her to keep going. And then she became a purging machine. But it all started with what the cork in the bottle actually was, which is that I don't matter to them anymore. That was huge. So, all right, friend, if this episode has hit home, I want you to do two things. First, go download the Clutter Languages Guide at clutterlanguagesguide.com. It's got all 10 clutter languages broken down, plus some reflection questions and strategies for each one. Second, stick with me for episode 3, because we're going to be talking about what it is and what it's not when it comes to why you're not getting your clutter done. We're going to be honing in on motivation, and we're going to talk about capacity. We're going to talk about nervous system load, the visible load, the invisible load, and why the advice to just try harder does not work when it comes to your clutter. This is where the deeper work begins. It doesn't begin with the bins. It doesn't begin with checklists or the step-by-step processes. Getting rid of your stuff starts with clarity and compassion and having a better framework and a better understanding of what is really going on. And the Clutter Language Guide is going to help you figure that out. So thanks for being here. I appreciate you so much. And we'll talk again in the third episode.